Professor Lee and I would like to share with you today part of our process. We actually made a book together, and we want to share with you about the book, but also about our process. So, Myeangsim Bogam, Professor Lee, what does Myeangsim Bogam mean in English?
We translated precious mirror of bright mind, but many English-speaking persons don't understand the exact meaning. We used Myeangsim Bogam, Korean name, for a precious mirror of brightness.
So this is a moral textbook, an ethical textbook, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So we'll share with you what Myeangsim Bogam is, and we'll talk about the history. We'll talk about our interest, how we're involved in this, and we'll talk about why we wanted to translate this into English, and we'll talk about our translation process, and then we'll share some of our favorite selections, and particularly Professor Lee has helped me to understand the importance of Myeangsim Bogam because of the universal lessons. And then we'll give you some other background about what we're doing with our book and say a big thank you. So Myeangsim Bogam, as Professor Lee mentioned, translates as a precious mirror of bright mind. And it recommends that you do good deeds, right? And you control your bad deeds. Okay? So it seems like a very simple, very logical type of ethical environment. However, Myeangsim Bogam is not like a current book. It's very old. We'll talk a bit about the history in a while. Many people critique it as being very quaint, kind of feudalistic type of moral philosophy. And these feudalistic values of loyalty and filial piety and chastity are things that these days in modern society just really are not followed or important. And once again, going back to what Professor Lee ingrained in me, right, as we were going through this process, is that really, yes, these feudalistic values seem very simplistic in modern society, but the main spirit is a universal etiquette for global citizens. So still today, we can read Myeangsim Bogam and take something away to help inspire us and to live a happy and wonderful life. So Myeangsim Bogam, okay, it talks about different etiquette practices. So Myeangsim Bogam is a list of different aphorisms. They're short sayings. And these short sayings cover many different kinds of moral attitudes. Public morals, how we act in public, right? So there'll be some stories as well as some aphorisms in Myeangsim Bogam that show people how they're interacting with each other, who's doing the right thing, who's doing the wrong thing, and share etiquette practice, so actually how to do things. Things like how often should you visit someone, how long should you stay when you visit someone. All of those different things are mentioned. It also talks about proper body language. I think one of the things that gets left behind when people talk about Myeangsim Bogam is the fact that it focuses on the importance of inner mind, and we'll talk about that in depth later. And it talks about trust and respect in society. So, Professor Lee, could you tell us something about the history?
Yes, Myeangsim Bogam published in 14th century in Goryeo dynasty, an old book. But this book, to be a textbook for children, very basic textbook, but contains divided into 25 parts. But more important thing is cultural inner mind education. But moral etiquette, manner is the least important. More important thing is control our mind. It's the essence of Myeangsim Bogam.
So, and I know at the beginning, the editor, it's somewhat disputed. Can you tell us about kind of the different versions of these editions of Myeangsim Bogam?
Yes, Myeangsim Bogam selected from Chinese classic and selected Korean filial piety stories. It's a collective book. But Korean dynasty Hee-jae was high officer members. He edited Myeangsim Bogam from Chinese classics. And his grandson, Chu-yu, introduced to China. And Chinese people re-selected new Myeangsim Bogam and two versions, Korean and Chinese. But Chinese people did not know Myeangsim Bogam. Most of all Korean people know well Myeangsim Bogam. Nowadays, we read Myeangsim Bogam. It's very, very steady seller in Korea.
And some of the interesting things that I learned about this is, right, it's an older textbook, but an artifact was found in Gwangju, right, and there's several different editions. So it used to be that they're curating from Chinese classics and then putting it as their edition, but there were several different editions. But people think that Hee-jae and Banjamin, I can't say it correctly. Yeah, thank you. These are the most influential that come to us today. So as Professor Lee mentioned, this is basically a Korean reader. So this was used for small children. After they would learn their Chinese letters, this is how they would practice their Chinese. It's been read by Koreans since the Chosun dynasty, and it's a moral textbook, as mentioned. In the early part of the 20th century, it was actually required reading for kids, right? So we'll share a little bit about the whole curriculum of all the different books that the kids would learn about Chinese letters, but yet it's Korea, so this strong influence of Chinese literature and Confucian values is coming in, but it's still tweaked in a Korean way. And I think that, for me, this process of translating and editing with Professor Lee has helped me to understand a lot better the differences about what's Korean, what's Chinese, what's Confucian, what's Taoist, what's Buddhist. And I think that most people think Myeangsim Bogam is very focused on a Confucian background, but actually there's just a significant amount that we translated that was very familiar to me from studying Taoist and Buddhist texts. From here, we are going to show you, I think, there we go. I don't know my buttons yet. So I think it's interesting because Myeangsim Bogam, it's how to help a non-Korean understand the importance and the influence of this. So we're sharing kind of the educational influence here. There was actually a series of several books that children would have to learn, primarily in Chinese, right, or using Chinese letters. They would either learn it, read them to practice, or learn the letters. And here we have several different of the books that Myeangsim Bogam included in part of the curriculum. So can you tell us about a few of these different books and the different types of things the kids had to learn?
It's a Chosun dynasty textbook for children. All Chinese character. Only Hungmongjae is Korean alphabet used. All the Korean children firstly learned to Chinese character. Myeangsim Bogam also textbook for Chinese character. But this book, Sajasoa, still remains a very good book for Chinese character. Sajasoa. And lastly, Sohak. Sohak is very important books in Chosun dynasty. Nowadays, all books lost, only remain Myeangsim Bogam.
So as mentioned before, most people think of Myeangsim Bogam as being significantly influenced by Confucian values, but Taoist values are also deeply embedded in Myeangsim Bogam. The Taoist manners of health are very frequently cited in these different aphorisms. We'll share a few of them with you later. I think Professor Lee really helped me to understand this about, because I read it and it sounds very quaint, but then I hear Professor Lee's explanation of what it means to him, and it really shows how Myeangsim Bogam actually helped Koreans to move from the Confucian dogmatism that was pushed upon them and move towards a more multicultural type of interpretation of those classic Chinese texts. So it's something that I think is very relevant for today, as Korea continues to be inundated actually by Western culture now. But Western culture is being filtered through a Korean lens. So this is almost something that, Korean culture has done before with Chinese. So I think it's a very good book to reread again now, and it's been a great experience for me to participate in this. From here, what we'd like to do is talk a little bit about how this happened. So we made a book. We're selling a book. Buy our book, right? So actually, I didn't translate. 한국만 못해요. So I'm an editor, and I supported Dr. Lee's translation into English. And his specialty, right, is this background. So can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yes, I'm studying Confucianism, especially Korean Confucianism, rituals, Korean rituals, Confucian rituals and royal ancestral rituals. There are many old rituals in Korea, still remain. But Chinese people do not remember the history of Confucian rituals. I'm studying Korean rituals, especially Confucian rituals, and other Oriental philosophy. Confucian ritual is my major.
So, and for me, I'm very much a novice. This year, I've been in Korea 17 years on and off. Actually, in August, it will be 10 years in Gwangju. So, but I'm still learning, right? This is not what my study background. So, however, my background, I do have a degree in philosophy. So many times we would have discussions. They would become about philosophy, and for me to try and understand Korea, because I'm like, okay. So people are telling me this is Korean, but from what I remember from like grade school and high school religion and philosophy classes, it's more Chinese. So for me, having lots of access to such an expert has been kind of my personal tutor, my mentor, in helping me to understand not just Korea or Korean literature or philosophy, but helping to understand my students today. I teach university, and many times there's things where I think they're more Western than I am, but then there's other things where I'm just like, wow, okay, this is very much deeply ingrained Korean culture that is still being practiced today. So we'd like to talk a little bit more about why we actually translated this. Oh, sorry, so many words. Okay, not so important. So I'll read to you. Okay. So we wanted to share a Korean interpretation of Asian values. So many times, from the Western perspective, Japan and China kind of overtake, and then India, of course, right? Those are significant purveyors of what is Asian, whereas Korean culture is very unique. It's not something that is Chinese or is Japanese. It has its own place. And we thought Myeangsim Bogam is a wonderful text to put into English to show that uniquely Korean aspect. We thought it was also important because this was a core text for children, and so it significantly impacts how society is practiced. And the curation of these Chinese resources, I think, is incredibly important to showing the Korean psyche, because not everything is translated from the Chinese into Korean. Select pieces are chosen. So what is and what is not in Myeangsim Bogam is a commentary on how Korea viewed China and the usefulness of their philosophy. Myeangsim Bogam was to focus on kind of the everyday people. It was people, merchants, or the farmers, the people in the villages. This was a philosophy and an ethic to help village life. So you've got Chinese classics that are more focused on people who are more enfranchised. And I think Myeangsim Bogam kind of talks to the common people. And I think that that commentary shows through by the selections that are made. And there's no English version. Professor Lee did so much research. I think he found, a Spanish?
Spanish.
Yeah, Spanish, I think Russian? No. So Spanish version, but no English version of Myeangsim Bogam. So we thought, let's do it. So we did. How did we do this?
He was my teacher, English teacher. The listen to talk about Myeangsim Bogam. And I translated, but my English is Konglish. She did not understand. We again asked me, and we translated.
I want to pipe in here. I didn't understand, not because of his Konglish, but because Korean is a high context language. So many times he would actually do almost a perfect translation, but that perfect translation to me was like, what? Because he would say something in so few words, and to me, when we would discuss it, I'm like, I need lots more words in English to say the same thing. So it was really a great experience for me, right? Because I have access to an expert who is very patient, and Professor Lee would always give great explanations of these very short, pithy translations, because in Korean that would be a good direct translation, but because the culture is not also apparent in that short, pithy translation, it becomes much more difficult. So in editing, many times I was adding many words, right? Because I'm like, I'm a philosophy major and I don't really get this, so I'll give people some help. So if you have complaints about the translation, probably it's because of my editing. So, and what we did is Professor Lee would send me an aphorism a day through Facebook. And then we put it into Microsoft Word, we edited. Professor Lee went and found a publisher for us, and voila! We have Myeangsim Bogam in Chinese, Korean, and English. So it's quite a unique book in that way. So, and we had to make some decisions about how we would translate things. And one of the decisions was about how we would translate the word for Confucius. So can you tell us a little bit?
Yes, we call Gwangju Confucius. The Korean people say Gwangju, but English-speaking person understand the Confucius, Latin from Latin language. But Myeangsim Bogam is a Korean book. Then I think Korean Gwangju is a perfect word. Then we selected Gwangju, not Confucius. Is the character of our Myeangsim Bogam translation.
So I would receive these translations from Professor Lee in my Facebook message, and sometimes he would translate it as Gongcha, and sometimes as Confucius. When he translated as Gongcha, already my mind was much more like, who is this? What's going on? Whereas when he would translate as Confucius, I had baggage, right, from being from a Western culture, and it would start out Confucius says, and I would think, oh my God, this is a fortune cookie. And so when he switched from Confucius to Gongcha, it reignited the seriousness that I took and the interest and focus on the morality deeply embedded, as opposed to being something that I am kind of desensitized to, being from the West. So this was a very active choice of ours to translate Confucius as Gongcha. And Gongcha, there's 22 direct quotes about what Gongcha says, plus several others that are referring to what he says. So it's a very significant part of the book. how are we doing on time? We're doing pretty good? All right. So what we'd like to do now is kind of move on to talking about some of our favorite sayings. So, and we'll start by talking about good deeds. So can you explain to us the emphasis about good deeds in Myeangsim Bogam?
Myeangsim Bogam starts from 개선, part of 개선. 개선 means success, good. Good and bad is a standard of moral activity. Myeangsim Bogam emphasis on good deeds. But why we did good deeds? The Myeangsim Bogam is our duty. Good deed is our duty. And next, we get happiness from good deed. But another book, if you good deed, then you get happy. Order is different. Myeangsim Bogam, firstly, you must good deed, then you will be happy. Different order. Myeangsim Bogam speaks.
I found this emphasis a little bit difficult to deal with, coming from the West. So, to me, like doing good deeds is kind of a duty. It's a social duty, right? So, and it didn't necessarily reflect my inner mind, right? I come from a Catholic background, and it was a duty to do good things, right? And having studied Buddhism and Taoism in university and high school, and then again through Myeangsim Bogam, it really finally resonated to me that it's like, yeah, like really true giving always comes from an inner mind first. It's not about duty. It's not about have to. It's not about an obligation. There is a freedom and a genuineness to being able to do good deeds without an expectation coming back. And that comes from an inner mind. And I think Myeangsim Bogam, through the aphorisms, reinforces that in a very beautiful and poetic way. We chose a few of these. I know these are too small for most of you to read on here, so I'll read them aloud for you. Very portentous. Gwangju says that even if for one day you don't think about goodness, evil can arise all too easily. So, kind of nerve-wracking, right? But then we have some other ones, right, that we'll go on to the next page here. And once again, I'm sorry that this is so small. We cut, but still not enough. When I see that another person is good, I see my own good. When I see another person's evil, I see my own evil. This observation is instructive. And this, of course, harkens back to a Western culture of the Bible with, don't take the, sliver out of somebody else's eye until you take the log out of your own. So it's a very wonderful, simple style of the same type of metaphor that I'm familiar with. And some of the other good deeds, can you read for these? Enjoy, wrong button. So, enjoy seeing well. Enjoy hearing good work. Enjoy talking well. Enjoy acting in goodwill. Hearing evil is like carrying thorns. Hearing good is like holding an orchid. So, and Professor Lee, as he was sharing with me, he kind of always would harken back to modern society. That these days, we like good deeds. Good deeds are good. But really, we tend to like money more. We have this kind of attachment to something that is not necessarily based on inner mind. We have an attachment very much that is external and materialistic. And I think we're still doing good on time. All right, right button. So, as I mentioned, Professor Lee really emphasized to me that this book was about universal lessons. And I think that instead of reading through some of these, if we ask Professor Lee to share how he thinks that Myeangsim Bogam is relevant for modern-day society. So could you share your ideas with us?
Yes, even though Myeangsim Bogam was an old book, very ancient book, but modern time need the Myeangsim Bogam lessons. For example, Myeangsim Bogam emphasis on control inner mind is very essence of Myeangsim Bogam's lesson. But modern society people want to a lot of money, a lot of position, too much desirable life. Okay? They cannot get happy. But Myeangsim Bogam always says, control inner mind, control desire. Then you will be happy. This is, I think, very important lesson, universal lesson, timeless. But modern people forget the lesson. I think it's a very good idea.
So to remember, you should buy our book. Another plug, right? Okay. So we would like to wrap up with some suggestions from Myeangsim Bogam about how to have a bright mind yourself. Okay? So we'll start with a Taoist influenced saying. Can you help me? Kyunghae-nok. Okay? Kyunghae-nok says plain food makes a fresh mind. A clean mind makes comforting dreams. Okay, so I know we're selling sugar outside, but you want to keep things simple, right? Okay. And our next one I think is very important because it shows the influence and support of these classics, these Chinese classics that have been chosen for a Korean audience. And we have to remember that Korea is kind of really almost bullied in a lot by Chinese thinking, right? So a way to show expression is to kind of fight the scholarly thinking that comes from Confucianism. The person who meditates works with a tranquil mind. Even if he does not read books, he can be a virtuous gentleman. And I think this very much shows a Korean aspect that it's about meditating, being in your own mind, and not necessarily building up, not maybe your money, but building up the number of books that you've read. That is important, which is a very Chinese scholarly interpretation. And so it's a way for Korea to show that you don't have to be a scholar to be a happy person. Okay? And from here, we'll move on to our last couple bits of advice. Okay? So, Professor Lee?
Chosun.
So, maintaining mind. If the mind is comfortable, even a humble house lives in peace. If nature is stable, even vegetable soup is fragrant. So as I have to eat almost only vegetables these days, this is very, very touching to me. So a simple lifestyle is very much encouraged through the bright mind. And I think the last set of aphorisms we have to share. When a bad man insults a good man never suffers recriminations. No response makes a clear and relaxed mind. The insult slinger spews only insults like scalding water. He spits into the sky only to have it fall on his own body. Okay? And I think that our community of Gwangju, many times we suffer from this. It's a small community. But when we remember that we need to kind of think of these things instead of being judgmental of others, that really helps us to move forward and have a bright mind instead of a negative mind. And could you close? Can you finish with why you think our community, we should enjoy a bright mind?
Professor Maria Lisa, good introducing for Myeangsim Bogam. But she mentioned Myeangsim Bogam background, Confucianism and Taoism. But what is the different thing between Confucianism and Taoism? Confucianism emphasizes on human relation, senior and junior, and teacher and student. But Taoistic idea emphasizes on individual mind, inner mind is different. Myeangsim Bogam selected various Taoistic books. It's very uniquely edited. Yes.
So we prepared more about filial piety, but I think that will be another day, another presentation for us. So we'd like to take the time now and say thank you. So today we are selling our book out there. I know I keep plugging it, all right? But actually the funds raised goes to two different things. Part of the money will go to GIC. I don't know if you're aware, but General Building is coming down. It's going to be demolished, and we have to find a new home. So part of the money will go to the GIC Moving Fund, and the other part of the money will go to the Jangpyeon Area Children's Center. John Worth is set up outside in the small greeting room, selling cookies and banana bread and muffins. He's also accepting donations as well. They're raising funds. Two of the small classrooms they're dangerous. So no one should be in them. The children should not be in them. They should be redone, actually torn down and remodeled. So they're raising funds right now for this building. So thank you so much, and especially thank you to Professor Lee. This was one of his first presentations in English, as he runs away. So thank you again.